What was your reaction, or what's your reaction with that letter from the president, from the former president?
Quite frankly, it was a letter I imagined that at a point would be written by Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, because he's established a track record for writing such letters. During the military era, he was always writing his letters. Indeed, there was one that he wrote to the erstwhile maximal military ruler, President Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, wherein, he used such words as Babangida being deficit in honor, in integrity, in competence, and so on and so forth, which was given wide publicity by its publication, even in an age when we are not quite digital in terms of information technology as we had it today. And since then, he's been writing his letters. So for me, given the way things were going, I imagined that at the point that Chief Olusegun Obasanjo will write that letter. Now, on this occasion, he's brought it out in the form of a special press statement. And it's still possible that a letter has been written, which the public is yet to be aware of before now, or some letter have been written. And if they've not been written, maybe other letters will come. Now, my general statement on that letter is that largely it is a collation of the angst of the Nigerian people. It's a collation of our collective disappointment for those who had high hopes. Is actually a reflection of the frustration of Nigerians with this administration. And so he's put it in his own way, interlacing it, as it were, with proverbs here and there, and his own peculiar way of addressing issues. But largely, he's just reflecting what Nigerians are saying in the closet of their homes, in their offices, at bus stops, at newspaper reading centers in the morning, and all over the place. Because it's obvious that there is a kind of digression towards perdition. There's a drift. There's a drift. There's some horrible video clips that are circulating everywhere in the country now, which collectively show an unbelievable level of depravity and bestiality. There are things you can't even watch because it assails your humanity. And this event took place in this country. And nobody's giving us answers. So my general view is that, yes, OBJ has done it again. And so it's got everybody talking.
Now, let me now, based on your first comments, that this is not the first time OBJ is going to write this kind of letter.
No.
And one begins to wonder, is this going to be ominous? What does this portend for President Muhammadu Buhari as 2019 inches closer?
I'd rather we focus on what it portends for Nigerians. But we can address directly what it portends for President Muhammadu Buhari, and I will be very clear. Muhammadu Buhari, as president, is a member of the old guard. he was a former military head of state in this country. He was overthrown in a military coup, and later on, he had reason to serve under General Sani Abacha, a brute, a notorious embezzler of public funds, and a very Hitlerite leader, so to speak, who was killing people on the streets in this country. So he had reason to serve with him, with his petroleum trust fund, and he didn't bother much about the need for democratization. His colleagues were being handed, with whom he was in the Supreme Military Council in those days, was killed. On record, we never had him utter any statement in condemnation of what Abacha was doing. He was just sitting down there with him, working. He saw no evil, smelled no evil, and all that. And so Obasanjo was released from prison, and Northern Power brokers felt that he should be the one to be the president. And pronto, by 2001, this president had started saying that he wanted to be president. And from that 2001, when he joined the political party, he started running. He ran in 2003, 2007, and each time the president speaks now, he tells us his odyssey, how he struggled for power. There were people who were with him from when he started. And indeed, the last time he regaled us with that story was when he met with some stakeholders, when he was telling them that those who fought for him were not even of northern extraction, to demonstrate that he's tribalized, he's not an ethnic champion, and he's not a nepotist, right? Now, this letter, coming as it were, from a doyen of the old guard, may well be a kind of messaging from that constituency that is hardly visible, yet very powerful in the country. And there are not many. And the demonstration of that kind of power is evident when people who are seeking political power, run to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo for endorsement. As a matter of fact, while coming, I was just reflecting on what transpired in the past. For those who are, foot soldiers and some hordes of Facebookers who have been raining insults on him, I said, yeah, you can do that. But if you run to a man and you hail him as a navigator, because that was what Obasanjo was called by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu when they went to him, to the chagrin of many Nigerians who have saying, you people talked about change, why must you go to Obasanjo again? Then, Nigerians forget now. And he says, they're a navigator. So if you run to a man in his home looking for endorsement, courting him as a navigator, now that he's publicly deprecating you as a liquidator, because he's saying that you should wind up. What does a liquidator do? It winds up companies and business concerns and all that. So you can't but tolerate the man and then listen to what he's got to say. So my view is that the constituency that produced the president as a military officer, which then put him on the pedestal to contest for presidential power, which he had now. Because, let's not deceive ourselves, without Buhari being a former military head of state, a former governor, a former petroleum minister under the military and all that, a former PTF, there's no way he would have been proximate enough to access presidential power in Nigeria. So this letter coming from that circle may well be a kind of strong disapproval. Not just a reflection of what Nigerians are saying, but strong disapproval from that constituency. And so, since he is a fellow initiate, in a manner of speaking, he will understand this messaging much more than the ordinary people will understand it.
Good. You also talked about looking at what it portends for Nigerians. And for example, Chief Obasanjo also stated in that letter that the situation that made Nigerians vote Jonathan out of office is again staring Nigerians in the face.
Yes. It is staring on the face. And I think that those early commentators on this matter, I've not heard any one of them saying those situations are not there.
They've not done that,
but what they are saying is that, oh, this man is a good man, but he has some persons around him that are not good. If you are a leader and you exercise your judgment of choice or political judgment to assemble a team, and the people you assemble are found to be wanting in certain respects, and they are not suitable to govern. They don't share your acclaimed view or your touted view or position. So what do you do to them? You weed them out. If you retain them, then your integrity becomes suspect.
Now, Barrister, let me ask you this, because part of the issues that Obasanjo raised was the nepotistic, appointments made by the president. Why, in your own view, sir, do you think the president finds it hard, difficult to remove this element?
You know, we are products of our socialization. And we are differently socialized. It's not just about ethnic hatred or because you don't trust the other people or you see them differently or you hate them. It may not be like that. When we are in the student movement, we had the opportunity to be traveling all over the country. We're perpetually on the road, going from campus to campus and all that. And we knew Nigerians, even as teenagers. Not what we read alone. We were going everywhere. So we had a national outlook. And you imagine that anybody that had been in the military, being a national institution of importance, that person, will be a patriot, will be a nationalist, will be a person that one can count on as somebody who wants the best for all our people, regardless of our diversity, our ethnic backgrounds, our religious backgrounds, our geographical location, things like that. But if by choice or by happenstance you limit yourself to certain places, and it could be Lagos, it could be Kaduna, it could be your own native territory, and your co-ethnics are your best friends and associates that you can rely upon, you will have to move out of that cocoon deliberately to have a kind of rainbow team that can deliver in a country as diverse as Nigeria. That's being charitable. If you don't want to be charitable, you say that no, this is deliberate, you're dealing with a nepotist here or somebody who is a die-in-the-wool ethnic champion rather than a national or Nigerian leader. And so what he needs to do, and that's what a lot of people have been saying, even his supporters have been saying since this special press statement was released, he will need to reinvent and salvage is administration. There are a lot of people who have been giving advice, who are saying, look, you can still do it. You can reinvent yourself. You can do a number of things. You can sack those who are not fit for purpose. You can be more forceful on the rule of law, on ensuring that there's equality of all before the law, which Obasanjo, talked about in his press statement, that there are no sacred cows and that you treat unequal people equally, right, in the face of the law. You can still do that. And whether he can do that will depend on a number of things, including whether he's receptive to corrections. Because if you are self-opinionated or you believe that you are right and that you are not wrong, you are not going to listen to advice. If you have contempt for the person that is giving advice to you, you're not likely to look kindly to the advice that is giving you and draw a distinction or a line between the useful advice that may emanate from that loathsome person that you don't like. So if you are not a broad-minded person, you may not listen to that kind of advice, and then by and by, the mandate will be exhausted, and then the day of reckoning will come.
Let me also look at the point where Chief Obasanjo also said that the president does not have a grasp of foreign policy as well as the economy. And some couple of hours ago, the Minister for Information actually released a press statement in order to respond to that letter, saying that Chief Obasanjo does not have, because of his busy schedule, he was not availed with the developments in the country, and he listed some indices. I mean, is there a problem there?
Look, I regard that response as knee-jerk. What Obasanjo wrote in that letter is not something that ought to generate a response within 24 hours. And if we're going to have that response ought to come as actions, deeds and acts of state that show superb statecraft, not blandish statements, generating data. And I can just give you an example. Look, wages have not increased in the country. When Buhari came, a bag of sachet water that people sell was selling about 50 naira, 60 naira. It's now about 150 naira. I'm just using common examples. And when the prices were going up, what they were saying is that, dollar don't go up. In fact, I remember very well that my daughter was just smiling. He said, what has dollar got to do with sachet water? Then, so you can be you can be throwing data at Nigerian people. These do not reflect the reality that the people live in every day. People realize that things are more difficult now than they were before. People realize that when Buhari came, he had to increase the price of petroleum products. And people didn't even argue much because the trust and confidence was there. It was a staggering, it was a steep increase. But people just took it and said, okay, well, he's trying to salvage a very terrible situation. People realized that when he came, the exchange rate is different from what it is now. And it's not come down. So the Minister of Information can release anything. But the point is that what Obasanjo is saying is what Nigerians are saying, regardless of who is saying it. It's what Nigerians are saying. So, that's even just one aspect. The economy. His charges are many. Nepotism, poor management of the economy, not being conversant or nuanced in foreign affairs or foreign policy, the state of insecurity in the country that has increased, even the anti-corruption war that is not being fought vigorously, Boko Haram and insurgency, for which he scored him credit, but we're still having a lot of problems there. I mean, these are the issues. So when you then reel out data and talked about economic indices and all that, you've just addressed, if you've addressed it at all, one out of the many issues that have been raised. So how do you then deal with the issue of insecurity in the country and the federal government not showing empathy? And I'll give you an example, not even the Benue killing. When the killings before the election in Anambra took place, those killings in that church, my mind went back to Charlotte in the United States. And the other places where we had gun violence, where Obama, as the monarch-in-chief, will go, shake hands with the people who are bereaved, commiserate with them, worship with them. On a particular occasion, he mounted the podium in a church and was singing Amazing Grace and was shedding tears. That's what a leader does. And I was expecting that the federal government would go there and mourn with the people there. No representation. It was Anambra State government affair. So those things are important. So what do you do in government? And you are so many in government. You have so many ministers, so many aides, so many panels. So what do they do? When a government does not empathize with its own people, when they are bereaved. So how do you take that kind of government seriously? So you can, what I expected them to do, but now they've done what they usually do, what government usually do, knee-jerk. Yes, if you tackle me, I will double you. So if you hit me, I will hit you back. That's nonsense. What I expected, as I said, was that this government will sit back and say, okay, this is what Obasanjo is saying. Now, what are people saying outside? And we're not going to lie to ourselves. So how do we then begin to address this issue seriously? I give you an example. 2 examples. The dilatory, tepid, and casual approach to governance is very disconcerting. You are elected as a president, and it took you 6 months to appoint your minister and form a government. 2 years down the road, 3rd year, you've not reconstituted all the boards. You read out names, some of them are late. And now, that is in the doldrum again. That's thrown under the table. Now, because the last we heard of is that, okay, a committee has been set up to revise it. So when will the boards be sworn in? Nobody knows. And then the president comes forward to say, I like being deliberate. I like being slow. I've seen it all. I'm not in a hurry to do anything. What kind of communication is that? What kind of, if you understand the concept of Republican power, particularly anchored on the doctrine of social contract, you understand that you've been hired to do a job. So if I hire an employee, the Nigerian people are the employer. Buhari is our employee. So if we hire an employee that we are paying, and that employee looks at the employer and says, I'm not in a hurry to do anything. I take my time. That employee deserves to be fired immediately. There is urgency in our situation. The situation of the Nigerian people needs urgent remediation. So we don't want a president to come forward and tell us that, yes, I'm slow, I'm steady, I'm not in a hurry to do anything. That's not what we want to hear. And so What Obasanjo said is all encompassing. And I've said that it's not that it's so prescient or it's so prophetic or knowledgeable about our affairs. No, it's just a fantastic collator. What Nigerians are saying is what is given voice to.
He has also called for the president not to stand for re-election and that he should go home and rest. Do you agree with that, sir? Knowing the history of the president.
You know, my opinion about President Buhari running is not about what Obasanjo is saying about whether I should run or not. It's about what we can see. I've just finished making statements. This is your next question. If you hire somebody to do a job for you and is not doing well, and he says, give me an extension of time, don't you have a right to say no? Your contract is going to expire. You will go home after that contract has expired. Won't you do that? And for our countrymen who are saying that, oh, there is no alternative, they are engaging in self-condemnation and denigration. You've gone to school, you've gone to university, you manage your home, you manage offices, you manage your business in this country, and you open your mouth and you say that there is no alternative to anybody being a president? What nonsense. Alternatives are banned everywhere. There's alternative everywhere. Even in the scheme of our constitutional framework, there's an alternative. When you say you elect a president and you have a vice president, that vice president is the alternative to the president, should anything untoward happens. So for people that have to say that there is no alternative anywhere, he's the only person. These other political parties, they are flagging, they are on paper, dismissing them. You are dismissing your future and the possibility of our recovery. Social recovery, economic recovery, and political redemption. That's what you are dismissing with that kind of careless and loose talk. There's alternatives. We have alternatives everywhere. So, quite frankly, given what we've seen, the president should not only listen to what Obasanjo is saying. The president should listen to what his wife is saying, and should listen to what his body clock is saying. Is, as a matter of candor, stated even at the outset of his presidency, and it was published in the media, that his energy is not like his energy in the years gone by. That if he was younger, maybe he could have been able to do a lot of it. He said that, he volunteered that statement. Okay? So if he looks at himself and says, look, my party, this is what we've done, but I'm concerned about our geopolitics. Before this so-called power from this same part, and then once he's screened and he passes the test, you may consider him. So the idea of holding fast to power doesn't really make much sense in the circumstances. If I were in his shoes, I would do my term. Thank God that I was alive to do this term, and then I will move on. But that's not because Obasanjo is saying it. The Obasanjo's recommendation can rankle because of his own antecedent and pedigree and his personality. His holier than thou persona. That can rankle. that who are you to recommend that I should do one term? You did two, and you wanted to do the third. So who are you to recommend that to me? Who are you to recommend rest to me? Okay? Oh, you are now talking about the need for me to refurbish my health and recoup and join you. In 2007, did you think about that? When I was younger, I contested that election. You brought Yaradua from my state and you foisted him on your party and Nigeria. You became his campaign manager. The man evidently was ill. You are denying it. Only for you then to come forward later and say, oh, I didn't know that I was ill. He told me that I wasn't ill. So much so that people in that part of the country thought that it was a setup to make their region lose power. That he did it mischievously. So who are you to recommend that to me? Now that I should leave. But I plead that people should look beyond the personality of the man who's making the recommendation. If somebody recommends to me and says that, Jiti, don't you think that you should stop doing what you're doing? Even scripturally it is said that sometimes what you want to hear from the mouth of the wise, you may hear from the mouth of the babes and suckling. Even from the mouth of a madman. So you take that and examine it and see whether, because look, for those who love this president very well, they are anguished. They are frustrated. In the social media everywhere, you see them recommending every day to our president, sack these people around you. Sack these people around you. Okay? And it's not doing that. So, if we are to have a re-election in 2019, is that how for the entire 2 terms of a president, you will be recommending to the president every day to sack people that he's working with? Is that feasible? Is it sustainable? That you'll be recommending to your president, sack these people now for an entire 4-year term. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So, a leader answers to his position. He leads. When you are suggesting that a leader is being misled, what you are implying that leader is being led. Because to mislead somebody, you must have led that person. And that would then mean that the leader you think you have is no longer the one leading. Because he's been led and he's been misled. So that means somehow the power that you collectively donated to your leader, that power has been taken away from him and is hollow. That proposition is detestable. We want a leader in word and in deed. And so, all that we've seen are not things that are so pleasant today. And when people, tout their, I reach back to that word again, tout their prescience. Oh, we told you so in 2015. You didn't tell us anything. The strategic decision taken by many patriots in this country who are not partisans and who are not politically affiliated, who are just electorate. The strategic decision that was taken in 2015 was that they looked at Nigeria and they saw that what was going on was not good. Okay? They looked at our history and they realized that we've not even passed the basic test of a multi-party democracy that Ghana had passed, moving from one party to another. Rawlings party losing power, another party taking over. Benin Republic, Magic-Kereke, Soglo. In Nigeria, from 1960, the ruling party had always been in power. And then they brought us to the precipice. Everything will get destroyed. 1966, 1983, And then the PDP was in the saddle and boasting and bragging, we will govern you. No, because they weren't even governing. We will rule you and ruin you for 60 years. That was the boast. Our citizenship was called to question. The question people were asking was whether we are slaves in our own country. And so everybody was resolved. You have to be sacked from power. It wasn't that the choice of this president was so, because we had, look. There are things people look for in a leader. And some of them may not be substantive things. They may just be form. A student who is impressionable may just admire a leader because of his oratorical prowess, his speech delivery capacity, his acumen in argument and marshalling his points. Okay? That election and the leader we've had, are they inspirational? But in spite of all those, people were resolved, look, we needed a change. And so we got that change. The least they expected was that at least that change worked for them. And there are things that you must do. You can be throwing your data and you say that you are doing all sorts of things and all that. People in the Lagos area, in the southwest, are looking at the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, for example. So are you going to deliver in 4 years? Or is this what is going to be in another 4 years? I mean, those are the little things that people look at. They look at the National Assembly and they see that for 90 years now, up to 20 years now, with all the political parties that gone there is a unity of irresponsibility. Why do I say so? On a limited question of how much do you earn? How can you earn money appropriately in such a way that Nigerians will not feel shortchanged? They've looked at us as idiots. They are not answerable to us. They are not responsible to us. And so they are called den of robber by this same Olusegun Obasanjo. They don't care. Okay? And their political parties, the party of change, quote unquote, has not been able to rein their own members. In fact, their members have gone rogue. They can't tell them to do anything. The opposition to Buhari is from his own party. They can't tell them to follow any policy or party line. So, it's a situation of bedlam. And so you have that situation and people say, oh, there is no alternative to that. No, that's not. If people are looking at that in terms of, oh, PDP was here for 16 years, so APC must also be there for at least 16 years, they miss the point. That's not how people look at these things.
Let me take this final question, sir, based on what Chief Obasanjo also reckoned in that Nigeria has only one choice, a coalition of the concerned and the willing, ready for positive and drastic change, progress and involvement. Do you see a third force rising at this point in time?
First, let me just quickly say this. And we didn't say that at the outset. What Obasanjo is doing is the usual political and power contestation. When the ruling elites, when they are fighting amongst themselves, they usually throw up populist slogans to rope in the people, and then to project themselves as champions of people's interest. In that thing that he wrote, there was no issue of class. There was no issue of even how to refederalize Nigeria. A Nigeria that was distorted by the military when they started concentrating power in the hands of the central government. He didn't say anything about that. He's just talking about whatever. But the point is that his recommendation of a coalition, is good. You can recommend anything. You're free to recommend anything. But that recommendation is fraught with danger. The way I deal with that recommendation is simply this. You are recommending a coalition of the willing, and they were not expected to challenge our bona fides. And those who ruined Nigeria yesterday and who are still ruining it today, who are dissatisfied with those who are governing, who have not been put in certain positions, who then come along and say that, oh, we are part of the coalition, we want to save Nigeria. You know, that's what the destroyers of the past were usually doing. Anytime there was a military coup, civilians would be the first persons to go to the military to say that they want to move Nigeria forward. And then they start serving the military that had just overthrown them from power, right? And so once the military was going, they will also be the first people to form political parties. So the kind of third force I wish to see is a third force of credible, ordinary people, drawing from the critical segments of society, the mass movement, the youth, students, labor, or whatever is left of it now, artisans, those in the academics, you know, such beautiful coalition, those in the entertainment industry, everywhere, you know, such critical mass. And then try to save Nigeria from the greed of the elite, including people like Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. If it is a coalition that is being envisioned to help the ruling class wage another intra-ruling class struggle, then that coalition will not achieve anything. Oh, Buhari is not doing it right. So let another ruling class element also take power. The ruling class is indeed a ruining class. They have no solution to our problems. And so we must have a kind of coalition from below. And this is not idealistic. This is not unrealistic. From below that can really challenge the status quo. So if that's what Chief Olusegun Obasanjo is recommending, although I think that that's not what he's recommending, then it's welcome. Maybe he's trying to commit class suicide in that regard. But, you know, people don't commit class suicide easily. So, in other words, the point is that we may be talking about, indeed, a fourth force. If Obasanjo's third force is what we're familiar with and what we've known that usually come from the elite, you know, all these past years of our national life.
Jiti Ogunye, we really appreciate your insightful overview on this issue.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you.